Mr. Ferland, would you mind just giving us a brief overview on the Energy Commission and how it's been going for the last couple of years?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd love to. Derek Ferland, Ward 3, was a member of the Energy Committee when it was formed in 2018 as a byproduct of the master plan that was adopted in 2017. And for most of that time, I served as the chair. So I'm happy to. I'll provide a brief overview, but I'll probably better serve to just answer any specific questions that you have. But the way the committee was structured was to implement Chapter 4 of the master plan, which is the chapter on energy. Presumably, at the time the council adopted it, it was deemed to be an important topic to merit its own chapter. And I think the intent of the committee was to help implement and operationalize the very lofty and broad goals and objectives contained in the chapter down to very pragmatic and task-centered projects. And I think we viewed the role of the committee to help augment city staff as an extension of the council, just because there's more work that needed to be done that I think could reasonably be done with existing city staff. So we kind of worked hand in glove through Director Merrill and the city manager to take apart Chapter 4. The first few months, we had quite a bit of guidance from a facilitator through Vital Communities to help us collectively figure out, okay, how do we do this? I mean, the master plan for energy kind of ranges from saving the planet down to how can we help save the city of Claremont and or its taxpayers money. And that's a pretty broad spectrum, as you might imagine. So for a committee of, well, nominally 5 people, but we never had 5 full committee members. So you take 4 citizens from the city whose common interest and unifying interest was simply to help. I think I could say we have a varied range of specialties and skills. And so, we're citizen volunteers, so you kind of get what you get. Plus, we only meet once a month. So I think in terms of an expectations management, Councilor Klosky, you said that the term expectations, I think that is a key part of maybe what the council expected of the committee and what the committee expected of the council. So be that as it may, I think we did the best we could over the last 3 years. In the memos that I provided, it was kind of like, hey, look, here's what we're thinking. This is what we've got planned for the year ahead. This is the work plan. And if we don't hear from you, this is what we're going to do. And I think the communication probably could have been a little bit better. And I don't know if it's that way across the board for all other committees. I don't know how many other committees actually were launched as a result of the master plan besides the Energy Committee. But I actually learned quite a bit about that process once former Mayor Levitt joined as the city council rep, because she was like, geez, we haven't heard about this, we haven't heard about that. And I was like, well, why haven't you? And it was just not clear to me as the chair what the expectation was. Were these, I started doing those reports because it seemed like a prudent thing to do, but nobody ever asked for them. And I never really got any feedback from the council. So we were just like, okay, let's just keep chugging along. Not to tout the accomplishments per se, but I did notice that some of the previous comments about the committee was, well, what have they done? We're no better off than when we started. And so that definitely got my attention. I mean, we did draft the ordinance on the solar ordinance, or renewable energy ordinance. It started out really focused on solar, but we expanded it to all renewables. And it might not sound like much, but that was a pretty heavy lift. I mean, that took a lot of time, especially given the fact that, you meet once a month, and we just kept plucking away at it. We had several other initiatives in our work plan. The electric vehicle charging station plan, again, something else that Director Merrill and her staff, I think, lacked the bandwidth to really tackle. And so that's where we jumped in, trying to do what we could to help assist the city staff, provide those work products for council approval where appropriate. And then we had a few other things on there as well. And it was really dictated by the individual interest of the committee members. It was really hard to say, hey, look, I know you may have joined this committee for whatever reason, but this is what you're going to do. I just felt like that was never an appropriate way to run the committee. I mean, we're already short a full-time person as it was. I thought the surest way to make people quit would be to tell them, check all your personal interests at the door. This is what you're going to work on. So we just tried to, again, merge the individual interests with the goals of Chapter 4 of the master plan and just try to make some progress. But we knew it was going to be slow and steady. I think it was slow, and well, it was very slow. But I'd also like to think it was steady. So I guess if the council wants to sunset it, I mean, that's certainly within the council's purview. I guess the question would be then, what do you expect to happen with Chapter 4? Because I'm just not sure what the operational arm of the city would be, unless you want to add staff to Director Merrill's team, but I think that would probably be a non-starter from a budget perspective, but I'll leave those hard decisions to you all. So I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Does anybody have any questions of Mr. Ferland at this time? Mr. McLean?
Yes, well, first, it's really nice to see you.
Yes, and you as well. Welcome
Uh,
back.
Thank you. And so I'm wondering, did you have recommendations with respect to what the charge should look like? What needs to happen next if the committee were to continue?
Great question. I think it would be just the expectations from the council. There's a lot of ways you can tackle the topic of energy. Do you want to save energy for energy's sake? Do you want to save money? Usually it's an issue where doing one helps with the other. Mm-hmm. I think there's a very pragmatic aspect of trying to save money. Then the next question is, are you talking city money, the municipal budget, or individual taxpayers? Because that's where we frankly struggled a little bit. One of our projects was an energy savings performance contract. We were trying to partner with the county, the school district, and the city to do one big, that would be a very tempting RFP package for energy savings companies. So that was one way we thought, well, we can do both, save energy and money. That would benefit the taxpayers. And another initiative was partnering with New Hampshire Saves to do the button-up workshops. And one year we did one in person at the tech center in the Goodrich room. And then this past fall it was done virtually. And those are things that, in addition to the ongoing topic of public outreach and education, it's just a massive lift. The persistence that's required to really affect that and feel like you're making forward progress, I think reasonably exceeded the capabilities of what our committee was going to do. I mean, the first time we did the button-up workshop, I think we had 2 or 3 people show up in person, and it was recorded, and it's in the archives, presumably. I don't know how many views it's gotten, but that's a way to help the taxpayers, the individual homeowners, save money. And so it's like, well, is our focus on that? Is it on the city? Is it everything? And you very quickly become overwhelmed if you have 15 number one priorities. So helping sharpen and maybe focus that priority list from the council's perspective as it pertains within the broad framework of Chapter 4, I think would be an excellent way for the next committee, if there is one, to sort of help refine their job jar and their priorities.
Councilor Kolosky?
And I did make the comment of not knowing or stating that I don't know that we're in a better place than we were. And I apologize for saying that. That's what I'm trying to get to. And looking back through at the chapter as it references the goals and even establishing the Energy Committee, I think it's important to maintain that, but really, even as you just spoke to, defining what expectations are and having a better communication plan. And it's not just that board or committee. A lot of us serve on those, and I think it's very important. And I often hear at the end of the meeting, it's an agenda item, and we're asked if there are any committee reports, and there's silence in this room. So hopefully if you're sitting on one of these committees, you have something to say. I will. I sit in silence as well, but I'm sit on the planning board and have no problem telling you what we're currently tackling. So that being said, I don't know if it's appropriate we could sit here for hours and talk about what we think we need to whittle it down to, but would it be appropriate to have the policy committee look into, because at that point you can have maybe Mr. Ferland would weigh in and other board members. But I would like to move this forward.
Councilor Stone?
I think that would fall outside the purview of what the policy committee is designed for. And that should be a council-level discussion and decision.
Okay.
Mr. McLean?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry. Assistant Mayor Matto?
I think it's a good idea to keep this committee active. I learned a lot tonight, listening to Mr. Ferland, and maybe quarterly or semi-annually we could get an in-person update as to what they're working on, what their needs may be from. I think it's important too that we give some more support to a lot of these working committees from the staff level. And I know you guys are all stretched thin, but they should get the support they need. But the energy chapter is important, and these people are willing to give of their time, and I certainly would like to support that going forward. And I agree with Councilor Stone that it probably isn't a policy committee decision to maybe whittle their charge down, and maybe even that could be something that a few committee members and Director Merrill could sit down and maybe, define a little more clearly. But I have a much sharper, idea of what's going on, and I would like to see, rather than just memos in our packets, because we get 200-page packets, and to be honest with you, I don't pay attention to everything. And I much would prefer a person standing in front of me and explaining and being able to answer questions. So it probably doesn't need to be quarterly, maybe twice a year, just an update. This is what we're working on. What else would you want to see? That type of thing.
Another observation I had was that there was a slot for a council rep on one of the 5 seats. I don't know if it's that way for all city committees. So I don't know how spread thin you all as councilors would be having to go to, 3 or 4 meetings a week
Well,
for
we've got a
various.
couple of you guys that haven't picked the committee yet.
I actually
so
would like to take that one.
there we go. We got it right there.
And I know
Volunteer.
for about a year, we had a gap where there wasn't a council rep. So I think
Yeah.
that was another thing that contributed to some of the communication challenges. But again, that might go back to how task saturated you all are for the various committee requirements that you've got. I don't know what those are, but anyway, for what it's worth, I guess. But looks like if Councilor Beliveau is going to jump on it, then he's just about young enough and got the energy for it. No pun intended.
Mr. McLean?
Yes, I'm just wondering, so does this include the electric aggregation committee as well, like the discussion we're having right now, or is that a separate topic
I think
to
it's
be
a separate
taken up
one.
next?
Right. Are you on the electric aggregation committee?
I was not. So that was a subcommittee to the
Of the energy
advisory committee.
And is that populated? Are there people on that board?
There
I don't
are now. We barely had a quorum. So the history for that was, so this was started in 2018. The legislation that created within the state of New Hampshire, the
Yeah.
framework for this was in October of 2019. And then I think the city council, you all authorized the creation of a subcommittee
Yep.
sometime in 2020. Is that right? I can't
And we had some
remember.
applications at our last meeting, correct, for 1 or 2 of these boards?
Yes. Counselor Pulaski?
I would like that one to come back to us as a recommendation from the city manager, knowing what work has been done prior, what information that we have to date, in deciding whether, because we have the ability to join at any time outside of the committee.
Yeah, right.
So I would like that information to come back as a recommendation to us.
Of joining the,
Of if it's prudent to maintain an aggregation committee at that point, then I feel we discuss it then.
okay,
To me, it's 2 separate issues.
right.
Mr. McLean?
So I appreciate that, and I certainly would work with Director Merrill to evaluate that, and possibly with Derek as well, and just have a conversation about this electric aggregation issue, which I think is very important, so that the city knows where it stands and how it might take advantage of anything that comes down the pike towards that issue. I was also intrigued by Francis Gotthier's comments at the last meeting. I've asked Director Merrill if we could get together with him, and I don't know that she's scheduled that yet, so if he's watching television right now, he's hearing that, we would probably like to talk with him. And I know that he's very passionate about this, and so I'd love to just have that conversation with him and decide, and know a little bit more about what he sees along with others, and come back, as Councilor Klosky has said, and give the council some sort of report. And I'm assuming that you'd be available for that purpose.
Sure, I would be. I mean, I'll be as available
Put you in the
as you need me to be. I should point out I am a past member of the Energy Committee. I had not intended to proceed beyond December 13th when my previous term expired, but certainly would be available to share any information of the past 3 years. I will say, so the subcommittee was under the purview of the main committee, so we talked about aggregation all the time. We had several of our members attended one of the Clean Energy New Hampshire conferences, so as the information was rolling out, we were getting as informed as we could about the mechanics of it and what are the advantages and what are the goals and what are you really trying to achieve, because we were looking at it at the county level as well. So I was trying to kind of do double duty by getting up to speed on those details. We had a wonderful presentation from the city of Keene. There are definitely different ways to skin that cat as far as how you want to join an aggregation pool, whether it's through Community Power New Hampshire, the Henry Herndon Group, as it's euphemistically called, or by going to an individual broker, the way the city of Keene did it. I mean, either way, you're going to pay somebody for their services, which, eats into whatever savings you're going to get. So again, that's another one of those expectations management things I think about. What are the city's objectives? I don't know that there's untold millions of dollars to be saved, as some might believe. A typical energy bill of $100 a month, 40 of it is on the consumption and 60 is on the distribution. You're only going to save money on the consumption side. So even optimistically, if you save 10%, that's $4 a month. I mean, nobody's going to retire early because the city decided to do an aggregation. It does help a community achieve objectives in terms of procuring sources of green power, and that kind of depends on the community. Trust me, we spend a lot of time talking about what are objectives for the city of Claremont. Hanover is in a much different situation with regard to their approach. They want to do 100% renewable, and they probably don't care if they pay 30 cents a kilowatt hour. I mean, I don't know what they'd pay, but they really want to do renewables. That's a big push for them. I'm not sure that approach makes sense for our community. Maybe someday it will. Right now, I thought it would be pragmatic to have an option that did save individual ratepayers as much as possible, even if it was from dirty sources of generation. But those options, you can build an aggregation pool that has all those different options. That's kind of how the city of Keene approached it. They had a default package, and then various degrees of increasing levels of renewable energy in the portfolio with rates that change along with it, and just let people choose. But yeah, there's a lot to it. And if the city does want to proceed, certainly maintaining that subcommittee or making it a direct committee under the council would be a great way to go.
With the aggregation committee, based upon the way the makeup of that committee was designed according to the document, we have appointed several people to that committee, and we're actually not following the makeup of the committee properly. At this point, pretty much every member that has been appointed to the aggregation committee is also part of the Energy Advisory Committee. So we really need to look at that before our meeting, before we start appointing people. We either need to change what the makeup is, but if it's going to be 5 people that are already sitting there for the Electrical Energy Committee, I'm not sure it really makes sense to make them go for a separate meeting to call it an aggregation if we're going to have the same 5 people sitting there. So.
And that was something we discussed as well. And I think the general consensus was we didn't think we could do both at the same time and do them effectively. So we tried to browbeat a couple of the main committee members to be on the subcommittee, and even that was a challenge. And again, we only had 4 full-time committees, so it was a matter of kind of doing the whole not it game. And we were waiting for more citizen volunteers to come forward that were interested, and we waited a while. I think it was well over a year before we had Jess Ball step forward, and then as former mayor realized she was going to be former mayor, she stepped forward as the council rep and had agreed to transition to be a citizen rep, which was great. But really, that was it. Besides the committee members, and it was kind of hard to work on normal job jar and take that aggregation topic on too, because it's pretty big. I think when Keene formed their citizen committee, I want to say they had like a dozen members, maybe more, and they had it formed within a month. And they got their plan done in a year, and that was when as COVID was starting. So that was pretty amazing. But it just goes to show it takes a number of people to get involved to really work through all those issues and have the engagements that are necessary to make sure that you're getting all the input from citizens about what plan options they want to see. So there's quite a bit of work involved, but it's certainly not. We're not curing cancer here. This is doable. It just takes some people to do it.
And again, getting back to the aggregation committee, like I said, I know that 2 of the members that were there are already part of the energy committee. The one that had applied earlier this month was part of the energy, wanted to also be a part of the energy committee. So at that point, that actually have to go to an alternate seat according to the makeup. So we're going to start running out of people that can actually vote in that aggregation committee as well if we don't relook at the makeup of it at this point. So, Councilor Contois.
So I was very pleased to hear you speak so clearly about the objectives of what has come down the pike from Chapter 4 as the committee was established. You were quite clear that an energy performance contract was done. That was 1. We wrote a solar ordinance, which is number 2, because we were led to believe that nothing was happening. Number 3, was the collaboration between your committee and the planning department coming up with the EV stations, which is something we continue to work on. And then you talked about the 2 button-up workshops. In addition to those 4 items, there was also, they participated in electric aggregation legislation, which actually passed our House and our Senate and is currently with the PUC. They've also collaborated on energy issues with the Upper Valley Lake Sunapee Regional Planning Commission. And they also wrote an energy resilience project, which was distributed to the city. So a lot was accomplished by this committee, and I thank you for leading that committee and your work, and sorry you're not going to be there in the future. But, you know, the Energy Committee, as laid out in the master plan, is the will of the people. I don't think that this council should do away with the electric, or the Energy Committee, or electric aggregation. I think there needs to be some simplification between, this is my personal opinion, of simplification between the Aggregation Committee and the Energy Committee, because I don't know we need to have a second committee, because it's like a no-brainer. We need to get on that train of saving, negotiating energy collectively with others. 13 other communities have done this already, as well as 1 county. So we need to get on this so we can save some money. And I think that's the conversation that Mr. McLean may have with Mr. Gauthier, because Mr. Gauthier spoke to that. Thank you.
Well, to be clear, nobody's doing anything right now until the Public Utility Commission gets its rules in order.
Right.
So, I mean, they're 2 years into it, and that still hasn't come. So you can build a plan all you want, and that would be great to do. Again, we did have a lot of conversations about, do we want to be the first ones in? Or do we want to maybe have a wait and see how this is going to go? There are a lot of unknowns with regard to this, whether you're going to do the CPNH thing and get into the power pool and do all the stuff that they want to do, or go with a broker and try to just get the lowest negotiated rate with a different series of plan options, and, you know, which is much quicker to achieve. Might not save as much, but it's probably a lot less, fewer moving parts. So again, there's a lot of detail.
And your committee also wrote 3 or 4 opinion pieces in the paper from, I think there was one on electric bicycles, there's one on electric cars, and so folks have spent a lot of time and energy working on energy issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Anybody have any further questions, Mr. Ferland? Thank you very much for your time tonight. I know you had already given up your chair, but your willingness to come out was very educational to all of us this evening.
Yeah,
So,
thank you.
so I guess I'm looking for the opinion of the council. It sounds to me what I'm hearing is that we're looking to keep the Energy Advisory Committee and have Mr. McLean discuss the aggregation with Director Merrill. Counselor Kolosky?
Yeah, I just don't know what avenue we go down to define the roles of the committee. And just as Councilor Contois spoke to about opinion pieces, and that was sort of where I was going, where without goals, or we're the ones that adopt what would be coming forward. And I think to have opinion pieces out there leading you, the community, in one direction, it could happen. Doesn't have to be this committee, but without clear definition, it could be the next. I don't like reading in the paper a direction we're heading and then being asked by somebody in the community, what's going on? And I have to say, I don't know, that hasn't been voted on here. So I don't know what road we go down to define what the expectations are, a little more than the bullet points in the 2017 master plan.
Mr. McLean?
So I appreciate that. I think probably we're all feeling that same way right now. I think that it does need an evaluation. I'm glad that the council is considering putting this on hold for a moment and letting us look into it. We can certainly look at what others are doing. We can certainly look at whether or not there's a cutting edge here in New Hampshire. I think Derek has spoken to this to a certain extent, referencing several other communities that seem to be on their way with respect to some of these issues. Whether that also transitions to Claremont in some fashion, you'll be the judge of that. We'll try to just look at it and give you what we think are the facts as they relate to the presentation you've heard here this evening, as well as what's going on around us. And then you can, I think at that point, evaluate what or how you want this to go forward. and the value that it might return on the investment of time by the citizens who are appointed.
Everybody good with Mr.
Sounds good
McClinton's?
to me.
The timeline for this is not going to happen within the next 2 weeks. It's going to take a little bit for us to get on this. There's an awful lot going on right now in the city. I'm thinking that, we'll certainly try to give an update within a month with respect to our efforts in this regard, and maybe we'll be successful then to bring something forward, or maybe it'll take a little longer, but we'll certainly put this on our schedule to at least update you with respect to our efforts.
Council motion?
Yeah, I just wanted to one more time thank Mr. Ferland and the members of the Energy Advisory Commission for the work they did, and really just anyone in Claremont who serves on a commission or a committee. It's important to have citizen participation, and I know that as a council we appreciate that and welcome that. So I just wanted to one more time thank Mr. Ferland, members of the commission, and anyone in our community who serves. So thank you.
Thank you, Council Moser. Okay. Okay, so I guess we're on to our,
No, we're not.
okay?
Because we made a motion to disband it, and it was seconded before we table this. That's the online motion that we have to deal with
Okay.
for the Energy Advisory Committee.
So the motion was made by Councilor Kolosky and seconded by Councilor O'Hearn. Yes.
I rescind my original motion.
Councilor O'Hearn?
I suppose I'll take.
So at this point, Councilor Kolosky has withdrawn his motion to disband the Energy Advisory Committee, and Councilor O'Hearn has also agreed to pull his second for the motion. Any discussion? If not, Mrs. Russell?
There's nothing
No,
We don't have to vote on
Nothing to
it.
vote on.
No.
Super. One less thing.
Unless you want to go back.
I prefer not, so. The Electrical Aggregation Committee. The motion was made by Councilor Stone, seconded by Councilor O'Hearn. Actually, there was just a table. We didn't
that
actually
one.
make a motion on that one, so.
And we
So I
took
guess
it
we
off.
can leave that one alone, so. Okay. I believe that would be the end of our discussion on the energy advisory and electric aggregation.
Mayor,